Welcome to the fourth episode of Meet the Curator. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientist Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials and nanoscience, who would be curating the RealSci_Nano Twitter account. Stay tuned to know more about this week's curator. Hello everyone. Today we have with us Professor Michele Celebrano, who is an associate professor at the Politecnico di Milano. And he's speaking to us from France today. Hi Michele, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Panoti. Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to this conversation, or let's say small dialogue, or maybe monologue. I don't know. I'd be happy to anyway answer your questions.
Okay, wonderful. Let's begin. Maybe we can start with how did you end up in your current research field?
Yeah, well, I more or less ended up in this research field. I ended up working on the same topic as the one I started with during my master, actually, which was at the start. It was my first research task was to couple ultra-short laser pulses to a scanning near-field optical microscope, and at the time was a really challenging task because you have to really confine light into a very tiny aperture, which is very inside a scanning probe. I don't want to go into the detail, but it's a very challenging thing to do, especially if you think about super short pulses with a lot of energy, so they will tend to break everything. So you have to be very careful. It's a very, let's say, complicated task and a very delicate one. Eventually I became good enough in generating second harmonic in very tiny hotspot in Goldman antennas, and we, after struggling a lot, we got our first paper out. So this was more or less like one PhD for one paper, but it was worth the try because it was very exciting time and a very motivating period to me. So motivated that I decided to stay a little bit more and move to postdoc, not really with near field microscopes. So I just left it on a side, and I decided to work on simple microscopy, like far field microscopy. So simple microscope, objective and light. And I went to ETH Zurich, trying to, as my mentor of the time would want to say, push the limits of confocal microscopy, which is, in simple words, trying to get the smallest signal, the detection of the smallest signal possible with an optical device. Since I received a call from Italy, as soon as everything was almost ended up in Zurich, actually my professor was moving to Erlangen in Germany, and I had to decide what to do. And then I received this call, which is a bit uncommon because it's easy to go away from Italy. There is this brain escape, this issue in Italy all the time. People are escaping, scientists are escaping, and going back is a bit more challenging. Nowadays, it's a little easier, but back at my times, it was really something unusual. And I was just like, they found me really I found this really unexpected, and I accepted immediately the offer because it was something that it's one of these offer you cannot refuse, right? Thus, I started to slowly assemble my new lab, let's say, with respect to my passion that I've cultivated in the past. So I left a little bit on the side molecules in favor of something which was more in the bloodline of the group where I was working now, so surface science oriented group. So I moved to metals and semiconductors, and then that's why I'm talking about what I've done in the past, because in the end of the day I managed to work again with nonlinear optics and nanostructures. So I ended up mainly doing what I've done in my master, but without the bothering issue of the near field microscope. That's the pain, right? So I took all the good stuff and removed a little bit of the pain.
So you filtered it in a way that it is more fun and more encouraging for your students as well.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, that sounds super interesting. And where would you say your current research falls in the domain of materials and nanoscience?
So, well, I think the title that would summarize my field of research would be actually to engineering plasmonics and dielectric and nanostructural antenna and metasurfaces for efficient nonlinear light-by-light conversion at the nanoscale. Basically, that says it all. It's a lot of buzzwords and keywords, but in principle is using nano antenna to confine light and convert light by using another beam of light. So in a way, the first step towards some optical logic element at the nanoscale.
Okay, so using nano antennas to convert light using another light into what?
So the point is that when you want to make two photons to talk to each other,
Right.
it's not possible, right? I mean, unless you have a medium which mediated. I mean, you need somebody who's get these two photons to talk because otherwise they won't talk, right?
Right.
And so it's somehow, usually it's some big bulky crystal that you use to do this, and you generate harmonics, you generate two photons out of one sometimes. This is called also entangled photons for quantum optics, for example. And the point is that you need something, a mediation system. And this mediation system could be any sort of material. In my case, I choose plasmonics for the efficiency and dielectrics because they do not have any particular losses. But I choose to make them at the nanoscale so that we can think about integrating everything to a very small device, right?
Uh-huh. Okay. Smaller the device, I think the more it will be in demand also for the industry then. It's like you do a lot of interesting experiments and working on a lot of interesting research projects. So which research project would you like to mention that you are most proud of? And could you explain it to us in very simple words in the section we call In Other Words? No buzzwords, please.
So I think if I have to bet on one of the topic I was written involved is really to fuse what I'm doing, so nonlinear optics at the nanoscale, and evolve it into a meta surface, a meta device which can manipulate the photons. So you generate different photons, so you in a way use photons to tell other photons what to do. But you also have a substrate which is intelligent and can be changed so that you don't have to change the photons to change the action, but you can also act externally based on your material, right? That's something that really, and let's say in other words, this, if you want, the cool thing would be to design an ultra flat, so like literally flat, like a single surface of material that allows photons to talk to each other and to tell them what to do and what to become and where to go in, say, what would be a millionth of a billionth of a second, which is the femtosecond, which is the shortest time, at least, feasible with simple laser system to save, to attain transport of information safe and fast, in this way. So I hope it's simple enough.
Yeah, I understood the last part really well, I think. No, but this sounds super interesting that you use light, first of all, to tell the photons where to go. That is one thing. And if that doesn't work, or even if it works, you have the plan B where you're using these meta surfaces to change the behavior of the photons, if I may call it so.
Change it. Then we go to much the technical details, but in a way I don't want to go because then
It's not simple.
words, no, in other words. So let's say, let's keep it this way. Yes.
Yeah, let's keep it that way. All right, that sounds super interesting. So Michele, do you teach? And if you do, which courses do you like to mention? Which are your favorite, or which are your students' favorite? You can pick.
Actually, yeah, I do teach. As since I'm what you would call young professor. Well, I hope I can consider myself still a rather young
Yes, you are
professor.
young. You are young.
Usually, you teach at the bachelor level. So I'm teaching at the first year of bachelor. It's a rather huge course
Which
of
bachelor?
physics. It's mechanics, thermodynamics, and electromagnetism all together. I mean, these poor guys. I mean, I'm also coming to half of the course. When I come to half semester, I almost forgot about what I taught at the. It's really huge load of stuff. Anyway,
Okay.
I do really appreciate the possibility actually to teach these basics because it allows you to, in a way, restudy every year the fundamental of physics, which is somehow when you go back to even metasurfaces, you need Maxwell equations, and studying Maxwell equation is not like studying them when you're in engineering course.
Right.
You didn't understand it very well there. You probably don't understand them very well even now, but you can start to understand a little bit better, right? So, it is allowed to comprehend much better some basic concept that we take for granted during, for example, our bachelor studies, but they are absolutely not. Sometimes even questioned by the students on the simplest concept you can think of can make you start, questioning yourself about even the Newton's law. Like they just ask you a damn simple question, but it's very subtle concept. And if you try to explain them in very simple words, there's something that doesn't turns out to be correct because there is always a little approximation, right? And now
Yeah.
we start to get a bug of why this little approximation. Students usually are taking it for granted because they don't want to bother and study other stuff. But
Right.
the teacher is nice to go into these little details, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I mean, next year I will have the chance to have another course. Will be scanning probe techniques to a master course this time.
Okay.
So finally, my dream has come true. Uh, but they don't take away from me the other course, so I will have more to teach. Everything comes to a certain expenses.
Maybe you can outsource it to your postdocs. Maybe they can brush up their knowledge and take the first year bachelor course.
Yes, usually this is a good idea, actually. I'm not really an enslaver usually, but this is a good
It's not
idea.
labor, it's saving you time and you're actually focusing on the master course. So
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
see.
a win-win for everyone, yeah?
It's a good point of view.
All right. That is great to hear that your dream has come true and you will be teaching the master course next semester. Now let's move a bit to your research experience, away from the teaching and to the research experience. If you had three wishes to improve your research experience, what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, okay? What would you ask for? Three wishes.
You know, one thing I didn't quite yet understood, talking about science is why Europe, I mean, we are talking about, wishes you cannot really satisfy, but it's anyway something that I want to talk to put on. Europe is granting this ERC, for fundamental science, and, everybody are applying, the rate is very low.
Right.
But actually, the most important part of these applications are always impact and the disruptive nature of the project. And this is something that bothers me a lot because in the end of the day, this is fundamental science. And if it's fundamental, I do not maybe expect to get granted like billions, but at least I would want, that there is a funding for basic research that allows to get, some incremental, sometimes behind the small incremental steps, there are some subtle findings that are really revolutionary, but you don't know them in advance, right? I mean, if you would know in advance what is coming out of something, and most of the things that have been used for the mission on Mars and mission on the moon came off of some random research, and they found, oh, we can use it for that, right? I mean, they never thought, oh, we do it for that. That's the beautiful thing about science, that something unexpected comes out, right? So first basic wish would be that basic research would be more funded without huge expectation, maybe, less amount of money.
Okay.
Then, for second, I would say I would love that there would be a less less amount of super hype journals in favor of some more, let's call it, we can give it a title, Journal of Reproducible Results, something like that. It's always something that comes up in the Twitter or something. People would want to have this possibility of just, a guy from another side of the world has done the result. Oh, he scooped me. Okay, just the experiment. No, no way. It's not that you scooped and then you stop. It's good to go on and see whether it turns out to be the same, right? Because we are publishing too much in these days, and too many paper out there. I believe they are not well double checked. Actually, referee doesn't have all the instrument to understand out of the paper that this result is reliable or not. I mean, to
The
somehow,
reproducibility.
yes, you have somehow to trust, and somehow this brings another issue. You have to trust, and usually you trust people which are already famous. And so people that are famous get more published because they have this entrustment for referees that when they see the results, they say, "Ah, this guy is really good, so it has to be true," right? When you're young and you have to enter a field, it's much tougher, which is good in a way because then you have to work a lot. But in the end of the day, it would be nice if there is more journals that reproduce results and there are more, reproducible things around. So that's second. Coming to the third, I think I have to go with that. I mean, there's always one of them which go with that. My personal point of view on the gender. I think this is really a messy ground, and I'm probably one of the most politically incorrect person in the world.
Give it a
Uh,
shot.
yeah, and I'm Italian, so it's also more messy ground. But however, I have to say that too many people nowadays are focusing on equality, so gender equality and erasing the difference between the genders. So treat me like a man, or being treated like a man, or don't think that you are a man and then you can do this. We have to, or like women are not good at that, or all these things. So comparison in trying to make the difference sounds bad, so that in the end of the day you have to find and to force people to think, oh, we have to make everything as equal as possible, right? At least, which is on one end, I mean, from the opportunity point of view, it's certainly true. But I think that this will become immediately available. I mean, not immediately, it will take time. All the big revolution take time, but it will take time, but it will come naturally, I would say, if people start to, take diversity as a great asset, actually, not like a limitation. If gender, race, all these things do not come like a difference that separates, but some added value to life. I need this indication, and just because if I ask to a person which is very similar to me, then I will have an answer which I already know, which I probably agree with, and which is not the correct one because it doesn't give me the other point of view, maybe, right? So the third wish is really that I wish that people would stop really fighting on the equality and they would really give real value to diversity.
Okay. Yeah, these wishes are absolutely fair, I feel. And just to put the third one in a more elaborate way, maybe a more diplomatic way or more translated in a different way, what you mean basically is to not treat inequality in a negative way, but put a positive spin on it and say that which values will be added rather
Absolutely.
than pointing out what is missing. Put a positive spin on it and say that, okay, if you have people from different parts of the world, from different cultures, of different race and different color and different gender, how much you will gain rather than
Absolutely.
pointing out what you're missing.
Yes, yes. It's not
That's
like
yeah.
my life in the lab is miserable because I'm living with this person that might be another gender by chance.
Right.
And since it's another gender, it has a different attitude towards something, and then I'm miserable. I mean, different attitudes is fine. We can deal with different attitudes, different behavior, different character. But think about what maybe that person is taking to your lab. Maybe different background, different way of seeing things, reacting on things.
Right.
That's the thing.
Instead of saying how exclusive we are being, be more inclusive. Put
Yeah.
a positive
Yes.
coating on it.
I would call it not equality, but inclusiveness, right? Inclusiveness. Accept.
Inclusiveness,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, those three wishes, I hope, I wish I could grant all those wishes and make them come true like
I
a snap of fingers, but I can't.
Yeah, I know, I know. But you see, I was very nice and I didn't ask many money, right? I was definitely the first one asking just a few money. So
Yeah,
it's
what kind of a scientist are you? You're the one who is saying it's okay if you give me less money as long as you don't expect a positive,
yes,
not a positive, that's a strong word here, but a solid plan. So I'm sure I hope the ERC is listening. I hope the EU is listening and that they will take it into consideration. And I hope things will start moving in the right direction. All right, those three wishes were really interesting and really important. Let's talk a bit about the next 3 months. And now you mentioned that you are in a lab in France right now as a visiting professor. So, what are you most looking forward to in the next 3 months, other than going back to Milano?
these months here give me a lot of time also to think about the future because it's also good because when you are close to your lab, and we are not many in my lab, so I just have to supervise directly. You don't have much time to sit down and think. So I might probably start to write a little review that is then linked to a big proposal. And the big proposal, I think you can bet on what it is. We just talked about some of them, but I would love in the next coming months to have just time to stop. And here, at least for 1 month, I can have it. I really dream to have it when I be back in Milan, but I'm not sure. To think and focus what's really next in my research field, and of course, hopefully something more with respect to the thing that I already told you so far, because then maybe I didn't spoil everything about my research, and I have something more in my pocket, my drawer. I
Very
don't know. I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know. Maybe we can have another podcast in 3 months, and you will see. I
We will
can.
catch up with you. So what happened? Did everything go as planned? And where are your wishes? Did you hear anything? So we can do that. Okay. So before we finish, I would like to ask you, what do you think are the challenges or questions that the field of nano and material science is facing at the moment, in your view? What do you think? What are the biggest questions which need to be
Yes, yes. So I mean, the bigger questions, of course, are related to what, in case of nanomaterial science field, what can this bring up, right? So, what's the real impact of being able to manipulate, to see the nanoscale can take to, right? Which application? Um, you know, the subject is mainly the one I mentioned before in my field, at least in my restrict field, take meta surface, meta material to the next step of application. Of course, related to these surfaces, there is also the big challenge of see where 2D materials are going, because 2D materials are the most perfect meta surface, of course, if you can deal with them. And they are the most promising applications, and people are already trying to see where the applications are. Um, you know, Although for life science most of the things happens in the volume, I think in the near future for the nanomaterial science, everything is definitely two dimensions. And interfaces are awesome because they are an awesome playground to get exciting new phenomena. And I think flatland can be still the origin of many unpredicted and exotic effects and phenomena, I guess. Just to close, we have to just a little remark in the end that I want to add up is everybody is looking for application. What I'm witnessing recently also is that this looking for application, which is related to my point first, which I told before, is this impact disruptive. People are looking at application, and in many conferences, has happened to me that people are showing applications or like tentative applications, forgetting about the basic science behind. So when you go to nanoscience and nanoscale phenomena, everything is tricky, and people at certain point seems that once everything has been somehow explained, they stop bothering about what is happening at a single nanostructure level. They start to build up many meta surfaces, nanomaterials, do sensing, all these kind of things. But then you see that there are some major problem with the basics behind, and you see maybe this guy doesn't work, not because it doesn't really work, but because maybe you did something wrong and you didn't check carefully the science behind. And somehow I feel that there are, the variety that we are witnessing now comes with a price, right? And not all of us are doing things completely carefully, and they forget sometimes about the basics. And that's why I like to focus on the single one, and just small steps, slowly moving towards meta surfaces, because
Right.
you have to be careful.
Okay. Atoms and phonons and how they're moving and how to make them move.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Michele, it was lovely to speak with you. I hope you had fun. I learned a lot, and thank you very much for talking to me. It was really nice. And I wish you good luck in France, and good luck with writing this proposal in the next 3 months that you want to write.
Well, Pranothi, thank you very much for giving me this, space, and actually to, standing all this time listening to this long answer to questions, and I thank you so much. And I'm looking really forward to. I don't know what exactly I'm gonna do, but I'm looking forward to be the creator of this nice platform, actually.
Okay, we are looking forward to having you. It's always nice to speak with you, Michele. Thank you for listening to this podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. To know more about us, please visit our website, realscientistnano.org, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.